Welcome back, everyone, to the Fly Culture podcast with me, Pete Tigers. It's been an interesting start to the day. I left Devon very, very early. I somehow managed to drive over a bone that made my tyre explode. So I've been helped out by the RAC, so thank you very much from them. I put on my wading boot and a toad came out, and I'm trying to figure out if that's a good sign or a bad sign. We'll see. But I'm joined today by Mike Blackmore and Neil Swift, and we're on the test. And we're in a beautiful part of the world. I've seen just a few steps, and the guys have pointed out to me, and we've watched some chub spawning. The river looks absolutely beautiful. It's overcast. It's almost humid as well. And I'm told there's a few mayfly around. So we're going to have an explore of the river. I'm going to learn a little bit about the guys. Mike, I know a little bit of old as well. So it's lovely to catch up with him. But at the very bottom of the beat, it's absolutely beautiful. And there is a fabulous thatched fishing hut. And Neil, can you tell me a little bit about the fishing hut?
Absolutely. So, like you say, Pete, we're at the downstream extent of the Oakley Beat. The fishing hut here was built in around the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, by or for Frederick Halford, the high priest of dry fly fishing. It's been restored lovingly since then by the National Trust, who own this piece of water. And it really is one of those fantastic relics of where our sport came from.
And it is absolutely beautiful inside, and it's got that sort of smell, a cricket pavilion type smell, and you think you're perhaps walking in the steps, well, we are walking in the steps of pioneers in fly fishing, and to be able to see it, I'm going to have a wander inside in a moment, and to think that Halford's stepped in here and some of the things that he's seen here have shaped us as dry fly anglers as well. So I'm excited to see that. And when I met Neil when I parked up, that I said I recognised him from somewhere, and it may be from the distant past. But you're also in that the film Chalk as well, weren't you?
I was. So my background is that I was the river keeper here at Mottisfont for the National Trust from 2012, 2013 through to about 2020 when I moved over to the Wessex Rivers Trust to work with Mike here. So yeah, I spent a lot of time here down the years, and it's really exciting to be back as part of this new venture.
And we're going to find out a little bit more about the venture very, very shortly. But Mike, it's great to see you as always, and I feel very guilty because I'm the only person wearing waders at the moment, so I hope you're not going to be as polite, and if we see a fish rise that you're going to push me out the way at some stage and have a little bit of a go of it. But is all good with you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks, Pete. And yeah, as Neil says, we're really excited about the potential of taking a section of real traditional river test with all that kind of cultural history to it, and kind of really turning it on its head, dialing back the clock. And as you'll hopefully see, we've done a really extensive restoration project here, and this is a fishery that's gone from being a fairly commercial put and take stock fishery that we have restored to a wild trout fishery, and that has involved changing the habitat quite significantly, and it's also going to change the fishing experience quite a bit. So one of the reasons we're really happy to have you down here is we want to get you casting a fly and give us your thoughts on it, really, and hopefully tell us some things that might make it even better, or if we're really lucky, just tell us that it's already great.
Well, it looks great from what I've seen at the moment. And the first thing that I notice is that very often on chalk streams that the bankside vegetation is obliterated pretty much. And that's definitely not the case here. There's thick vegetation with access points in. That was obviously one of the first things you set to do.
Yes, well, actually, that was when the National Trust decided that they were going to make a change when the previous lease ended. One of the things they were very keen on was to really dial back on the bankside management. So what you'll see is that this isn't a riverbank that's being regularly streamed down anymore, and there's lots and lots of ecological benefits for that, but obviously it does change the fishing experience, and that's something we've had to really work around and think around in trying to kind of resurrect this as a wild trout fishery. But hopefully what we'll see is that from a biodiversity perspective, we're going to see much greater abundance and diversity of riverside plants, and hopefully that will do wonders for the fly life, and then that should do wonders for the fish, and then that should do wonders for the fishing. So it's a very different approach, and it will also mean that this is a fishery that will ideally be waded to fish, which is a big change for the river test. This isn't going to be your kind of typical stroll along the riverbank in your slippers, casting a fly wherever you like. It's going to be a fishery that has to be more tactically fished. But it also means that we should be able to wander up the riverbank and the fish won't see us coming, which will also be a bit of a change for the river test.
And Neil, to put this in context for people, we have people listen around the world to this podcast and they'll know about the test, of course. And you mentioned Mottisfont, where we are today. Where does that put us on the river system? Whereabouts do we stand? Because I'm looking at the river here and it's probably, 25, 30 feet across. Mm-hmm. But whereabouts are we actually on the system? How far up, how far down actually are we?
So we're towards the lower end of the middle test. And the stream that you see here is, much narrower than you'd expect to see on the middle test. That's because we're actually on, essentially a side channel. This channel would have been originally a carrier taking water down to Mottisfont Abbey itself. There was a mill there at one point. Like you have on a lot of the chalk streams, a lot of the channels have been historically modified by people for purposes over the years. The main channel of the test is about 3 times as wide as this, and it's about half a kilometre to our west. So there is, there's these little channels crisscross across the floodplain, all up and down the river. So you can be fishing on the middle test, but actually it's more like small stream fishing in a lot of ways.
It really is, and I noticed the tree cover as well, which is wonderful. So that's, again, and Mike, you used the word more technical fishing, and already I'm sort of planning out, right, do I need to fish this way? I need to be on the side a little bit more because there's branches overhanging, which is great for the fish for shade and everything else. And, knowing your background, Mike, and talking with you, Neil, as well, it's fish first policy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the idea that if you look after the river will look after the fish, and the fish will look after the anglers. Whereas for an awful lot of the middle test, because of the commercial fishery model, it's high demand fishing. So you've got to look after really the needs of the anglers, particularly as they're paying quite a premium to go and fish some of those fisheries. And the end result of that is that by making it easier and easier to fish, there's having less movement on the water, having less snags, having less things in the way that might catch a fly, inevitably the quality of the habitat is impacted. Now that's less of a problem if you've got a heavily stocked fishery, because those stocked fish have been raised in an artificial environment. They're kind of used to seeing people. Now when you're converting it back to a wild trout fishery, you're dealing with naturally spooky fish. So you need to have that cover in place. They need to have places where they're going to feel secure and hold up under overhead cover, tucked behind bits of woody debris that are in the channel, maybe tucked under the margins, places where they feel secure enough to actively feed. So it is definitely a more challenging fish because you've got to present your fly in a way that's going to tempt them out from those places, and those places are hard to get a fly into compared to a completely open uniform fishery. But part of that challenge really is part of the fun of wild trout fishing. It's really getting back to connecting to the behaviour of the fish. And I think for the anglers to really understand that this is a wild animal that you're kind of pitting yourself against, and really connecting with nature in that way. So in order for this to work as a wild trout fishery, it actually has to be slightly more difficult to fish, but it's more fun. And so I personally, it's right up my street, and we're really hoping that there's going to be lots of people who will feel the same way.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's lovely that probably either side of you've got a completely different environment and ecosystem as a result of it. But that's the wonderful thing about it. And seeing this as a fly angler, I go fishing to go fishing. I don't go to catch fish. And so this is really interesting for me to look at how the river's looking as we look upstream and wander up through. And it is completely different. As we talked about, the bankside vegetation probably comes out 5 or 6 feet and is thick, and there's areas cut where you can get in and out the river. That's a wonderful thing. I always feel that you're closer to the fishing when you're standing in the river as well. I feel more connected to it in a different way as well. So I'm excited. I'm really interested to see the river sort of heads up a little way, probably 100 yards, and then looks like it kinks a little bit as well. So I'm excited to see what's around the corner there. But yeah, I've been around the block a little bit. I still get excited when I see this. And I want to shout about something that's a little bit different, that how things are perceived, and people may perceive the test in a certain way. And there are 2 guys here doing something that is completely against the grain. And you'll know me, and you know I'm interested in anything that's against the grain. We walked just a very short distance upstream, and you can see where Neil and Mike have started work on the river, the restoration work. But where are we standing right now, Neil?
So right now we're stood on what feels a bit like a concrete bridge, but it's actually known as the Bunny, and it really is a testament to how mad the chalk streams are. And a bit of human ingenuity over the years is that the river goes over the top of a ditch. There's a ditch runs through a brick tunnel beneath the river, and we're stood on top of it, and the river flows over the top of it. It's really quite interesting. A lot of these things date back to old water meadow systems, old land drainage systems that, the mind boggles that at some point people did this. It's very interesting indeed.
Where does that actually lead to?
So this particular stream here that's running underneath our feet as we talk, heads round the corner here, round the back of the Oakley garden, round another couple of ditches, and eventually ends up over in the main channel of the test, like I was saying earlier, about 500-600 metres away from here.
And Mike, you were quite excited because as we look upstream, I can see you said that there was a weir here which you removed. There's some woody debris, and you were quite excited that there was some docks growing on the woody debris as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with these projects, we come in, and I've said previously, what we do is essentially a violent act. So we come in and kind of smash the place up, as it was, and and you add all these habitat features in, you reshape the riverbanks and what have you, and then the clock starts, and you've got for the next few years the river recovers and develops. One of the interesting things with chalk streams is that one of the biggest drivers of the morphology of a chalk stream compared to other rivers is the biology. So down in your neck of the woods, Pete, on the rivers in Devon, rivers like the Tor, where they're very kind of freestone systems. Every time there's a big spate, the whole river changes. That just doesn't happen on the chalk streams. What does happen is that the growth of plants in the river each year is so prolific that changes the habitat significantly. So what we've got is where this weir once was, there's some lovely bits of kind of natural, like woody habitat that we've placed in, and actually plants have established on it and started to grow, and that's starting to change the flow of the river already. So it's becoming this dynamic system, and this was essentially a very, very static system for years. Every year would have been more or less the same down here. And what we're hoping is that we're going to keep coming back now every season, and the river will be different, which is what chalk streams actually should be.
And what you mentioned here about the woody debris, and I always think as a chalk stream as a linear straight flow down the river, and of course there will be sort of bends in it, but the flow will be even all the way through. But you mentioned home, and we often, when I was guiding, would say the bubble line's foam is home, and where it's hitting the debris and towards us and then bouncing out towards our left, and you've got a very defined bubble line of flow, which I guess is good for the fish too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Think of it like a sushi bar. Okay, so the fish are going to be sat just out that faster flow, just conserving energy while the food comes past them, and they can just nip in and out of that flow to pick it off. And what it means that it's really good diverse habitat, lots of different niches that will be filled by lots of different life, but also from a fishing perspective, you can use a bit of rivercraft. You can actually think, well, I can read this water and see where the fish would be sitting and cast a fly there without seeing a fish. And that's another change that we'll have compared to a lot of chalk stream fishing, where you're used to being able to kind of walk up the riverbank, spot a fish, wait to see if it's rising, cast a fly at it. Here, actually, you could have probably a really good day without actually spotting the fish first and just casting for those places where a fish should be. And there's loads of little pockets of opportunity to play with.
Listeners won't know this, but while I've been talking to the guys, I've been transfixed on that bubble line just to see if anyone's going to pop in there. And Neil, there's a few duns starting to emerge too, isn't there?
Absolutely is. And I was just going to say the benefits of the wood in the river, the woody debris, go beyond the fish feeding. So I was here a couple of months ago, and in the clean gravel just downstream of this piece of woody debris, where the water's been pushed faster, concentrated flow into that area, it scoured out a nice pool, and on the gravel hump that forms downstream of that, there was a group of probably 7 or 8 grayling, all ready for spawning. Just fantastic to see, and it means that that the next generation of fish is coming through as well. But yeah, there's a few duns coming off now. I'm feeling excited about that. It's lovely to see. There was plenty of last night's spinners in the bushes as I walked up this morning, and it won't be long before we see a fish or two start to rise, I'm sure.
And I sort of worried a little bit about being 3 hours late due to my delays, but I think the timing seems pretty okay. So I think the plan is just to walk up the beat a little bit more. I've got a rod ready. I've not got a mayfly on, but it looks as though that's probably going to be the hatch. Like at home, there's been midge about. I've seen some other olives, I think, as well. Yeah, there's just one taking off there. I can just see a red kite in the distance as well. It is a beautiful scene. The river looks typical chalk stream, yet different in a good way. I'm excited to see a little bit more. So yeah, absolutely stunning. We walked just probably 20-30 feet upstream, saw a fish rise. I got into position. I'm always really nervous. I don't mind admitting this when there's people watching and there's expectation on you, and there wasn't any placed on me, I have to say, but you want to try and get off to a reasonable start. The cast, and this is again coming back to what the guys were talking about, that you got to think about the cast, and I really like that because you could just whoosh it back and forward, and it was a very rough roll cast. I got a relatively long leader on, not a super long one. The fish looked, I don't know, guys, what you thought, but it looked like he was taking stuff subsurface and on occasion following it as well a little bit. I wondered, anyway, these guys know much more about it than me, but that's how it looked. I was casting a little short of him first off. It wasn't where I thought he was, then managed to cover the fish, and amazingly the fish ate the fly as well, which was pretty cool, right, Neil?
It was extremely cool, and when we saw what fish that fish was, it was even cooler because it was an absolutely immaculate, stunning brown trout, wild, of between 2.5 and 3 pounds. It was just absolutely beautiful.
It was a really special moment for me. And again, with the woody debris, you've got to think about how you're playing those fish. So I was giving as much side strain as I felt comfortable with without pinging the fish. It was strong, but I managed to work on getting the head up, and then they can't get so much purchase. And after a couple of photos, he was away. And Mike, when you see things like this, that sort of justifies that you guys are all in on this, and rightly so. But when you see fish like that, you must be incredibly pleased.
No one's going to believe that really happened, I don't think. I mean, first few casts, and first shot of that fish, I was convinced that must be a stocky that had drifted down from upstream, and then once you got it in, Pete, I mean, the markings on it was absolutely beautiful, enormous wild trout. And yeah, I mean, absolute dream come true for us. That's exactly what we're hoping to achieve with restorations like this. Is something where the fish they're gonna spawn, they're gonna live out their whole life cycle, but you're still gonna have some areas where you're gonna hold some true whoppers like that, and they're here. So we know we've got it right, and that actually wasn't too difficult a fish to get to, I don't think. As you said, kind of more sort of lazily sipping away, which kind of made it even more magical, because we didn't know how big that fish was until you got it on. You know, there was just ripples, there was just something happening. And again, using that bit of kind of watercraft, thinking, well, where is it? Because we couldn't really see it that easily. And oh my God, what a fish! I think we're all still shaking. Unbelievable.
And it is those moments that I still shake after these moments, and it's part relief as well, because I thankfully didn't cock it up, and it turned out to be an extraordinary fish, an amazing fish. And as Mike said about the coloration of it, that those stockies, when they're put in, are always that bright. They're all the same. They all look the same. This was a dark fish, and I mentioned it's how I'd imagine an Irish lockfish, or as Mike said, a ferox would look. And then he said, well, it's kind of like some of those Eden trout as well, and was absolutely fabulous. And then couldn't believe it. You know, I was so lucky. And then Neil, with his eagle eyes, said, look, there's a fish sitting it was just beyond a rod length from me. He said, there's one there, and we saw it rise, and I covered it once, but I think the rod made it wary of something, so I took a few steps back downstream, flipped, and another beautiful wild fish of pound, would you say? Pound?
Yeah, about
a pound or so, came up and ate the fly. So I've caught a beautiful fish of my dreams, and didn't go further up the river. I actually went back down the river 2 paces and caught another one. So I'm absolutely astounded by this, and it's the real beauty of it. To me, the way that it's been managed by the guys, that it, like I said previously, it's not sort of a linear flow down, it's not straight, it's not been scoured to make it easy for the fishermen. It just looks pretty. It's a really pretty piece of water that I'm enjoying seeing, and what's happening here, look, there's a little movement there might be a fish there, and I'm thinking about it in a completely different way. I've got to admit, loving every second of it. We've only walked just a short distance upstream, probably 40, 50 feet, and we're looking, and I said to Neil, it's just so pretty. It looks a beautiful, beautiful little stream, the sort of place that you'd shut your eyes and think of a river. And I think for me, this would be it. And Neil was saying that there could be fish anywhere here, you know, and you've got these defined bubble lines, but you've got back eddies, you've got shade, you've got slacker water, all these sorts of spots. So you're really honed in, and you're tuned in, and you're feeling part of this already. And that just a short way upstream here again in front of us, there's a tree across the river. There's a little bit of woody debris opposite us. What went into this, Mike?
Well, we try to have a general principle when we do these restoration projects, that we ask ourselves, what would a storm do? And we're trying to create habitat features that look like they formed on their own. So the idea is that you wouldn't know, without seeing this river before, that we've actually done this restoration. So it looks like these are all habitat features that have occurred on their own. And I think, the sign of a good river restoration is that nobody should actually be able to tell that you did it unless they saw it before. So these sort of habitat features, that we're just replicating what happens naturally, because that's replicating natural habitat. And I think when you're talking about using wood and using woody debris in a river restoration, your first thought should be a tree's fallen over, and every step away from that you get is a step of it being slightly less natural. So we try to keep that as natural as possible. And another big part of this restoration, you also won't be able to tell, is the riverbanks have changed significantly. So we've walked past and we're walking towards a section of riverbank that was previously built out of concrete sandbags. And it was a vertical revetment with nothing growing. And that's been removed and the riverbank graded down. And now what we can see is a thick bed of sedges, of glyceria reeds, of sparganium. There's little pockets of iris. And it just looks like what a riverbank should look like.
And you also said that while I was playing the fish that you saw a hare too.
Again, nobody would believe it happened. Just a split second before that fish took, an enormous hare came walking down the riverbank towards us, and I was like, Neil! And Neil's filming you. I could see it in his face that I was just messing up his shot by making noises.
You were talking about. I was like, "It's hooked a fish."
I know, and there's just this massive hare, and it came almost to where we are and spotted us, and then ran off, and it just all happened at once. It's just like this magical thing. And again, a big part of what we're trying to achieve here is that this is fishing in nature, and I could come here and blank and have a really good day. I probably will come here and blank, but I will have a really good day because it will be a day spent really immersed in nature. And I think the wading's a big part of that as well, because I think that there's something very spiritual about standing in a river, and I think standing in a chalk stream is almost religious experience. And if you've got that in a wild chalk stream with all nature around you, I mean, what a way to do it.
We walked up a little bit further again and saw a fish rise, and I managed to cover it from the bank. It took a few casts, I have to admit, and I thought I'd spooked the fish, but it turned out he was a little tighter into our bank, so I didn't need to throw it as far across. And again, putting it in context, the river's not wide here. It's 30 feet. It's really not big, which is small. It's intimate. It's really, really nice from that point of view. So that's good. And Neil had been taking some photos and shooting some film. He'd been rolling up his trousers, taking off his shoes and socks and getting in. But Mike very kindly got him his waders from the car. So I've made sure that he's having a go now as well. This could be a communal pair of waders as well, Mike. So if you're the same shoe size, you might get a go as well in a moment. But we'd seen a fish rise once. It's still, although there's a nice flotilla of duns coming down the river, it's the emerger pattern that seems to be doing the business just at the moment. He's just risen again now, that fish, so Neil's seen him, so he's going to go into position. But Mike was just saying something about the mayfly on the chalk streams and how the dates are completely different. And how does that all play out here?
Well, it tends to be that, in my experience anyway, that they start a little bit earlier over on the Itchian, and then it kind of almost works its way west. So you'll get the mayfly starting on the Itchian catchment, and then you'll start to get them appearing on the test shortly afterwards, and then the avens are sort of a little bit later again. So I was saying, on my kind of home waters on the Wiley, quite often I do my mayfly fishing first half of June. Really, sometimes it doesn't quite kick off to then. I mean, sometimes I get that completely wrong and they're all gone, but yes, it does seem to be that it moves its way westward. I'm not quite sure why. One of those mysteries.
And for you, you mentioned the Wiley, and I know where you fish as well, but would you consider that your home water?
Yeah, I mean, I've got essentially a voluntary position with the Wiley Fly Fishing Club, where I look after kind of river and habitat management. A lot of that is doing stuff with the trees that falling, of which we have a lot of them. But we try and, where we can, see them as a gift from nature and something to maybe just be managed to make fishable around and retain it as habitat. And a lot of the inspiration of how we want to try and run this fishery here comes from the way that club waters work. That if you're wading the river, then you don't have to manage the riverbanks as much. If it's relatively lightly fished, then the river has time to recover between people fishing it, so everyone gets a good fishing experience. And it doesn't have to be manicured; it just has to be something you can get to, and it's a great experience. And again, it's somewhere where I go and quite happily blank all the time, and have a great time at it, because it's a lovely place.
Did you see that one?
And there is a fish just in front of Neil right now, and Neil's going through what's my equivalent of those nightmares you have where you're at school and you're in only your pants. Whereas is that he's fishing with somebody else's rod with people watching, which is it's my absolute nightmare fishing scenario, especially when it's with fishing with someone that I know is very good at it. I know that my form will completely go to shot, but hopefully Neil's in the swing of it now and he's going to cover this fish.
It looks absolutely spot on. Yeah, I forgot I had the microphone on when we were talking then, and saw that fish, and he was just dressing the fly or blowing it because he hasn't got a vest with him. So I'm probably going to get in with him in a moment and dry that fly off for him, because it looks as though it's a little... But everything looks really good to me, and I've got to say I wouldn't be doing anything different. And I assume by fishing with somebody a lot better, I'm assuming you're meaning Neil as well.
Yeah, pretty much anyone that I fish with. I'm completely self-taught, so I have every bad habit going. But I learned to fish on quite scruffy rivers, so I think in some respects I'm probably still ahead of some of the people that come and fish the test regularly.
And I think it doesn't matter as long as you're having a good time, and if it's working for you, it works. It does. I used to look under it probably a little while back under a microscope, but it just doesn't matter, does it?
No, it's exactly. At the end of the day, if you're doing this and your goal is to catch lots of fish, and that's all that matters to you, then yeah, the minutiae of all the different details and variations is going to really matter. But if you want to go out and have a nice time and maybe catch a fish while you're at it, it's not a big deal. It's not a complicated thing. And generally, I find the less you care about it, the more likely you are to catch a fish.
Yeah, there's a fish working, and Neil's covered it. Oh, you can see them coming up, eating the emerges. Like I've been saying, there's been a bunch of duns coming down. They're just not getting touched at all. And do you think that's the same fish, Neil? Yeah, so the fish is moving, he's working. Oh, did he look at it then? Yeah, you could just see his head lift up, and that wasn't for him that time. I thought I turned this on because it looked nailed on from that point of view. I thought that was game on. But yeah, he's looked again. There's something he doesn't like there.
He's also, it's right next to it. You've got real flies coming down right next to it. I mean, he's doing the same thing to those. So
yes.
What he's actually taking that's the tricky thing to figure out here, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas that emerges, I've had faith in that so far, but it doesn't always work. You think you've got the thing dialed in. There we go. He's got him. He's got him. Great job, Neil. Now, this is where I'm going to have to slide in, and I'm going to try my utmost. Is it deep? So I may have to see if I can get... Oh, I should be able to get in, actually. It's not too deep. I can get to the edge there. This might be online, where I actually do fall into the river whilst talking to you. So I'll continue to try and talk. So I've managed to get into the water now. It's because I've got the net. So there we go. So Neil's still on the bank there. This fish, there we go. Yep. There we go. Not going to just yet. I'll wait for him to come up to the surface, and that's always a good tip. Don't grab at the fish. I'd rather pull the net away than try and grab at a fish. I'm going to try and net this left-handed as well, which is high risk indeed. It's just, again, come in under the bank by me, so I've not grabbed at the fish. I'm going to change my hands round now while I'm talking to you, just so I've got my better hand to net this fish. Let's see what we can do. We're going to... No, he's still not ready. Got him. There we go. Fantastic. Great job, Neil. Mike's got to shoot off now, but we'd been chatting about, because I said to him, I want to come back here and fish. And I asked how much it is to actually fish. And they're busily putting packages together, but he's going to give you an idea of how this is going to operate. And this is another reason why this is so good, so that you've got a stunning fishery that the guys are looking after, that's looked after for the benefit of the fish, but with beautiful fishing, and you can wade in the river test as well, which is worth something. But how are you thinking of structuring this, Mike?
Well, the idea is that we want this to be truly affordable. So, there's an aspiration to kind of broaden the demographic of people fishing this. And when you're talking about the river test, the best way to do that is to lower the kind of financial barriers. So we still got a few things to work out, but what it will essentially be is pick your kind of cheapest possible day that you can get fishing on the test. It'll probably be about that price, but 3 beats for the price of 1 and 4 rods for the price of 1. So you and 3 mates can split the cost, have free roaming access across 3 beats. So you'd be talking about something like, if we get it right, 60 quid a pop between you and your mates to come and fish 3 beats of the test, or rather 2 beats of the test and 1 of the river done, the test trib. That will be by some enormous margin the cheapest fishing on the river test, and we're hoping that means it's going to appeal to a different demographic and get more people out here and fishing and experiencing the possibilities of a wild trout chalk stream fishery.
I can only applaud that, and if anyone wants some company when this is available, let me know, because I'll come up and fish with you. I'm coming back here again. It's amazing.
Can I just add to that? The fishing here is, the plan is, this is part of a wider package. So what we'll also be doing on the river is educational days. We'll be doing some non-fishing recreational activities. We're looking at potentially some riverbank well-being things. We've got someone potentially that's interested in looking at riverbank Pilates lessons. We've got someone wanting to do underwater photography lessons. We're basically trying to build a full chalk stream experience. And some of that will be free to those using it. Some of it will be at a price, but the idea is that certainly the education component is fully funded by us selling the fishing here. So every sort of pound that's spent is going to be reinvested in the future of our chalk streams, and particularly with young people, and getting them out and learning about chalk streams by actually getting to access and be on a chalk stream, which is a surprisingly difficult thing to do, especially on the river test. There's very little public access here. So we want to have it controlled. It's a site of special scientific interest. We've got to be very careful about the conservation and be very sensitive about what we do. But we want to get more people just understanding and valuing the chalk streams, and that's going to help protect them from into the future. And I think along the way, it's going to do wonders for people's well-being and education and opportunities and all the rest of it.
I think that's wonderful news, and we talk about ways of bringing people into fishing, and we can talk about this a lot, but that's a really easy way to do it. Break down the price barriers and let people fish amazing places like this. I'm going to let you go, Mike. It's been great to see you. Neil and I are going to wander up. We're going to talk fishing. We're going to record some more. We're catching some fish. The mayflies are hatching. There's a little bit of cloud starting to roll in, which is good news as well. But it hasn't seemed to have stopped the fish from rising from that point of view. So, Mike, it's great to see you, my friend, and I wish you every success. with this. I think it deserves it, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if you have people inquiring some more about this.
Thanks a lot, Pete.
We've had a bit of lunch, Neil and I, just been chatting for ages, actually, and it's been lovely. I've really, really been enjoying picking his brains and what the place means to him, but I couldn't come here and not sit in the hut. So we're sitting in the hut where Halford must have... Do you think things happened here and he made discoveries here and he brought things back to work on, do you think?
Absolutely. I think there's stories of, Halford's riverkeeper going out in the morning to catch whatever had been hatching, to bring it back so that Halford could sit in this very hut, probably looking out the window that we're looking out now, and tie flies to imitate what was hatching that day. So I can only imagine that some of his inventions and discoveries that we all benefit from today would have been conceived right here in this hut.
And I got to admit, I've got a little bit of goosebumps as well, and perhaps you have as well, picturing this. And it anywhere else it is a fishing hut, but it's a special fishing hut. And yeah, I can see, you can look up the river, you can see exactly what Neil is talking about. There's a picture of a brown trout on the floor here. And yeah, there must have been some amazing discoveries then and continually. And this stretch of river means a lot to you, and your relationship goes back a fair way as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So we were just chatting a little bit about how I came to be here, and I went back to education in my mid-20s at Sparshot College. And whilst I was there, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to do my dissertation on the river here, looking at some of the fish surveys that they'd done down the years of the National Trust owning this place. And in absolute stroke of good fortune, the river keeping job came available just shortly before I finished my degree. I was even more fortunate enough to then apply for and get that job, and started part-time whilst I was finishing my studies, and full-time literally the day after I finished my final exam. So it's that was back in 2013. Yeah, 2012. And I was here for 7 or 8 years as the riverkeeper before I moved on to the Wessex Rivers Trust.
And you were saying, again, we talked about fishing as a whole, and you brought up a really interesting point for me, that you said that fishing has changed over that period of time, let's say 7 or 8 years, let's say the last 10 years perhaps. But you're saying that river restoration has been likewise.
Absolutely. So we're constantly looking at what we do, how we do it, and what works. We're at the moment, I think Mike mentioned earlier, this kind of what would a storm do way of looking at river restoration, where maybe a few years ago we would have been looking at building a woody berm. These days we're more looking at where can we fell a tree into the river, trying to really replicate those natural processes that help these rivers evolve and help the ecology thrive. And there really is an absolute process of looking at what we do, how we do it, and interrogating that and making sure that what we do works as well as it possibly can.
Does that mean for you, though, and I get and understand that, and having seen it in beautiful harmony with the river and the fish, but with that, is there sometimes a little bit of pushback from people too?
Sometimes. I think that, everyone who's involved in the river test and rivers around the country, they do all have the river's best intentions at heart. And I think people see what we're trying to do. They understand that it comes from a place of wanting the best for a river too. Sometimes, not everyone's aims align. And that can, create a bit of pushback. I think, trees in rivers are a great example of that, because traditionally as people, we want to see things tidy. We want things to be neat and orderly, but nature isn't like that. And, people people sometimes don't quite understand the importance of something like wood in the river. But I think slowly attitudes are changing, and I think the majority of people are pretty much on board with what we're up to.
That's great to hear. And from a fishing perspective for you, and I've watched you fish this morning and see how very, 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 very handy you are with the fly rod. What does it mean from you from a fishing perspective? Is this where you would consider your home water because of that long attachment? But I know you live a short distance away. Where would you say is the place that you call home when you get your rod out and make a few casts?
You know what it is? It probably is here. I think there's a few bits of water for me that have some special memories. I think the lower part of the River Itchen. So there's a free stretch of the River Itchen that runs through Riverside Park, and I know most of your listeners are fly fishermen, but for me that was coarse fishing for barbel and carp through there. And whilst I was studying at Sparsholt, a good friend of mine and I spent a lot of time down there, and we caught some wonderful fish and we had some wonderful times. So that's a place to me that always has real resonance. But so far as fly fishing goes, absolutely, this is my home water now. I think we were talking a little bit earlier now that my introduction to fly fishing was much more on still waters, having grown up in Bromley, so kind of South London / Kent, depending on how you look at it. So small still waters there, catching rainbow trout, and so some of those to an extent would probably still be somewhat home water, but really from a fly fishing point of view, this is the place that has made me, I think.
It's a pretty nice one too. What's the plan for this afternoon?
This afternoon, I think we will pop down to the Rectory beat. So I think we mentioned earlier that we've got 3 beats of fishing here at Mottisfont. We've got the Oakley beat. We've then got the Rectory beat, which is downstream of Mottisfont Abbey itself. And we've got a beat of the River Dun itself. We might end up leaving that one for another day, but we'll go and look at the Rectory. That would be really interesting to have a look at for you, Pete, because we actually did a restoration project on there last winter. So you've seen this one today where we worked 2 years ago. You've seen just how it's come back and evolved, and everything's lush and grown up. So I thought it'd be interesting to go and look at something that's a bit fresher. We can look at what we've done and why down there, and see how it's recovering after last winter.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Made a drive 5 minutes or so down the road, and we're at a new beat now, Rectory beat. Very, very pretty. I think it's, for me, the test at its prettiest, that knee, thigh deep, ranunculus weed everywhere. And as I walk down, I can see Neil and Mike's work and what they've done here. And this part, you're only a year into this, yeah?
Absolutely. So this is a beat that we worked on last October. So you're really seeing it just after in its first growing season. So the vegetation isn't quite as lush as it will be. It's coming back beautifully, but it'll be another year before it really takes on that kind of mature look that the Oakley's got now.
And have you got further plans as well? Do you look, we've seen that fish has gone again. There's one just downstream of where we're looking from the bridge that Neil spotted ages before me, and I only saw the rings, but he's just gone again now. So we might creep wide round and see. Are we near the bottom of the beat, or is there more further down?
We're about halfway down.
Jeez. So there is plenty to get stuck into. And this comes under the thing if you split between 4 rods.
Absolutely. So there's 3 beats that we've got access to here as part of that. The Oakley beat, the Rectory, and there's also a beat of the River Dun, which is, again, just 5 minutes from here.
So that means, I guess, that if you book it with pals, 2 of you can fish one spot and 2 can fish another, and then you swap round at lunchtime or the evening, or do whatever you like, or fish one in the morning. There's enough fishing. That's the great thing about it, that there's a lovely mix. But already I'm appreciating the work Neil and Mike have done. You can see it, and it looks natural, it looks real, doesn't it? Which is almost a contradiction to what we'd expect with a chalk stream, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, what is that fish again?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything everything that we try to do, the aim is that you shouldn't know we've been here after a few years. Once everything's grown up and grown in, it should be like it's always been like this. There's another one down there as well. So I'm losing my train of thought because the fish keep rising. But yes, no, everything we do is the idea that it essentially becomes natural. And a lot of the techniques we use take advantage of natural processes. So where you put a log into the river, it scours a hole. That's a natural process. That's what happens in rivers. So there's an extent to which what we're doing is natural in a way.
Yeah, fish went again as well. So I think we probably need to walk downstream. There's some mayfly coming off, like at home, big plumes of midge as well, hatching. This guy's consistent. Do you reckon we walk down to the bottom, he's gone again, or do we have a go at him?
I think we need to go and have a cast at that fish.
I failed miserably on that fish. Thought I covered it okay. Splashy rises. Thought it might be taking duns. I gave it the emerger. Didn't take that. Tried a dun. Didn't take that. So I'm going to keep him for another time. And we're getting towards the bottom of the beat. And there's a fascinating bit here that there is a fair bit of woody debris in here. And I guess it would frighten some people to see it. But it makes perfect sense. You can see where the flow of the river is and what you've done with it. And there's that depth along the far side. And it is sort of, I would guess a lot of it is only ankle, shin deep. But what the guys have done is allowed the wood to do its thing and push the flow against the far bank. And you can see a deeper channel against the far bank. But what was the thought process regarding this, Neil?
So this is an area of the beat that it had lots of good things going for it already. There's a really good gradient here, so you've got fast, riffly water. But it was all very uniform. So you had quite a uniform flat bed at the time. And whilst we're on a bit of a meander, there wasn't a huge variation in flows. So given that we've got really good gradient in this point of the river, we put lots of wood in. Like Pete was saying, we've got a number of logs. There's a couple of whole trees went in here. And what that's doing is diversifying the flow. So there's areas where water's getting pushed towards the far bank. There's areas where it's getting pushed back in the other direction. There's areas where it's getting pushed under logs, where it's going over logs. And all of that is affecting the way the water flows over and through and round the gravels. So it's stirring up gravels, cleaning them off so we create some fantastic spawning habitat for the winter. It's creating deeper holes that maybe your larger fish are going to take refuge in. There's shallower, riffly areas where fry are going to find the kind of habitat they're after. And within this relatively short stretch of river, there's probably about 50, 60 metres that we're talking about here. You've got a diverse array of different habitat niches that's really going to be beneficial for fish of different age classes.
Because I think if it wasn't there, it would be one of those bits that looks really pretty, that it would be your archetypal chalk bed, and there'd be 3, 4, 5-inch fish in there that you would bolt the moment you cast at them. Whereas now you've made it an environment for a larger variety of year class, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's some decent little holes now that and cover as well. That, like you say, there's going to be fish of different year classes. There might be a bigger fish or two around now that hopefully fishermen will enjoy discovering that over the next few years.
And as we walk down today, is it something that you're thinking, right, I could probably do this here, or you could do that, or do you allow what you've done to settle in and bed down and then go from there?
I'm always trying to do the latter, but generally doing the former. So it's like, I guess a lot of listeners will find this with their own professions. Wherever you do something, even when you're really happy with it, you can always look back at it and be like, we could have done this here, or maybe I'll do that there in the future. We were both on here and the Oakley beat. There's spots that I look at it now and I'm like, we need to put something in there. That'll be really cool. That'll do something interesting that will be a benefit to the environment. So yes, I do look at it and enjoy it and feel satisfied about it. But at the same time, there's always room for improvement.
And is it one of those things that you've done so much work on it, you know it sort of kind of intimately that you almost, and the other beat, Oakley, obviously because you have that long association with it, but for here, for example, that you spent so much time working on it that you don't necessarily feel that you want to fish it or not?
Bits and pieces. I'd say a bit of both, in that I've no aversion to fishing any of these places, but at the same time, it gives me far more joy to see other people enjoying these places. Like we chatted earlier about what fishing has done for us in our lives, and we're in agreement that it's done a huge amount, I think, and to know that other people are getting some of that from places that I've been involved in and worked on, and hopefully improved, is massively satisfying. And I definitely don't always feel the need to have a rod in the hand. As much fun as it has been today to have a rod in my hand, and even catch a fish, it's been great fun. But it's not the be all and end all. And like I say, seeing people enjoy somewhere that you've worked hard on is very, very satisfying.
Neil's got to head back shortly, and my plan is to fish my way back to the car and then head back to Devon and go from there. But I'm going to just take my time while we've been standing here, just talking about stuff. We've seen a couple of fish rise, and as I often say on here, patience does pay out, and the river gives you the clues. And we've seen 3 fish rise now in the area that we've been describing. So I may make some tentative steps out very, very shortly. And it's trying to figure it out. The mayflies are hatching here, but they're not quite as prolific, would be my very humble observation, that they're not quite as prolific. So, and previously on the fish I didn't catch, I went to a caddis to try that. We'd seen some caddis, so I'm going to take my time. The rises that we've seen have been splashier, whereas on the other section that, they're more languid, I'm eating you as you're just emerging type rises, these aren't. So it might take a little bit more figuring out. But Neil, for this year, what is the plan, and then what's the plan for next year so that people can keep an eye out?
So for the remainder of this year, we're not actually selling any fishing. We're having some days like with people like yourself, Pete, just to kind of test the fishing, to get some feedback, to start getting some publicity. And then for the 2026 season, fishing will be available to purchase. It's a matter of getting everything ready at our end. So fishing will be here. It's not quite here yet. Hopefully, by the time this podcast goes out, there'll be a mailing list that you can sign up to. And I'm sure if that's the case, Pete will pop in the email address for you to sign up to get the news on when fishing will be available. But yeah, that's the plan for the rest of this summer, is to get everything in order, get everything ready, and look forward to that 2026 season.
I wish you every success that it deserves. My tuppence worth is that, it's just fishing. If you want to access historic sections of the River Test at an affordable price, what's not to like about that? What's not to like about people who are doing good for the river? And it's just great fishing. It's really good fun. It's fishing you have to think about a little bit, and I'm all for that. And I know if you listen to this podcast, you'd feel the same way about it as well. That it's not just throw it out and throw it across the river. It is right. How do I get a shot there? And I was bowing an arrow in a couple of spots, which I really enjoyed. I so wanted to catch that fish on a bow and arrow, but didn't. But I'll try again, perhaps a little bit later as well. But yes, there's nice casts that you can make and easy shots. There's plenty of those. But I think it makes you think as a fly angler, and I think that's good. And at the end of that, you probably think to yourself, I fished pretty well there. That was fun. So yeah, I'm going to continue. I might record some more if I spot something of interest, but yeah, this is good people doing good stuff, and I'll always shout about that. I've got no vested interest, and I said, look, if I come back again, they very kindly invited me along. If I come back again, I pay to come back, because that's, I think, the right way to do these things. And I wouldn't mind paying that and having some friends along with me. I think it would be great fun. So this won't be my last visit here, that's for sure. So thank you, Neil, so much for being a guest, and you can reply on Mike's behalf as well. We end the podcast, as we always do, with the toughest question I'm going to give you today. Can you give me a song for the Fly Culture road trip mix that's on Spotify? What's a song that if you're driving down here or if you're going to do some good stuff on the river, what's the song that sets the tone for you?
I think with the day we've had today, Pete, it's an easy one. It's Mayfly by Bell and Sebastian.
It's as easy as that, folks. I could have recorded some more for you, but to be honest, the fishing was too good. The hatch, some cloud came over, the hatch got going a little bit more, and I tied on the ever-faithful French partridge and have been really, really lucky and caught a bunch of fish. I couldn't tell you how many. I don't really count anyway, but I think it was a nice amount of fish. The bit that we were talking about latterly with Neil, with the trees down in the river, I had some fish there. And I spent my whole time looking for rising fish. And I'm really pleased I did because, they just told me where they were. And sometimes I made some casts and they ate it. Sometimes they didn't. But it's been extraordinary fishing and interesting fishing rather than, like I've been saying, I always think that you sort of whack it out and that's it, down that linear line, but working out the drifts, working out how to get a good cast, to me at least, is really, really interesting and makes that fish, if you get lucky enough to get it to come up and eat your fly, all that more special. So I've really, really enjoyed it. They're all wild fish. They're absolutely stunning. They're absolutely beautiful. I can't see what the time is now. It must be, it's coming up 6:30 now. And I'm getting towards the top of the beat. I can't make up my mind whether to have a wander down. Those ones that when I was talking on the bridge with Neil about that one that kept rising, I tried for it earlier, didn't get it. It was rising again. I tried for it, didn't get it. Changed flies up a number of times, changed my position, added loads of slack in just to see, but couldn't get it to eat. And I kind of like that sort of stuff. I know when I'm talking to myself that I've had a really, really good time. I'm super relaxed. Just fun. It's what fishing, for me at least, is all about. And the visual aspects, and I often talk about it on here, the visual aspect of chalk stream fishing, but I spotted a fish at the back of a tree that just came up and whacked the fly. It really did. And those parts of it I won't forget. I'm going to smile. I was hoping to stay over, but because of the puncture I've had, I've got to get that sorted out. So I'm not staying over. I've got everything in the car ready to do that. But I'll drive home with a smile on my face. I'll eat some junk food and I'll enjoy the drive home. And it's been great. I'm tired in a good way, in a really, really good way. It's been a long day, but for all the right reasons in the end. So, if you get a toad in your wading boot, might be a good sign. It's certainly paid off for me, and I'm really, really happy about that. I've just seen another fish rise, but you know what? I'm going to tip my hat and say, you go for it, buddy. You go for it. So this has been another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this one. I loved talking with the guys today and what they're doing, and I think it's going to be a great success. I hope that when it all gets off the ground next year, that people support it and support what they're doing, not just for the fishing but for the river itself as well. And that's really great news for us, and we're lucky, as I often say, to have people like this in fly fishing. So Neil, Mike, great one. Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast from the Chalk Streams. I hope you've enjoyed this one. There'll be plenty more coming soon. Of course, there's never going to be any charge for these. I just love talking to you about fishing, what it means to me, and hopefully you sharing that sentiment too. So thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.